I think the most important thing people can do is do meetings like this and just try and educate folks about it. And particularly, I think this is something that the anti-war movement should take up. I think it's, and so I was very glad, for instance, when the National Assembly Conference accepted or passed a resolution around Honduras. I think that's the right step for the anti-war movement. So I think the anti-war movement needs to take up demands. I think the key demand is cutting off the aid. That's the thing that everybody in Honduras was like, if we did that, it'd be like 15 minutes and the coup would be finished. So I think that's the key demand. I mean, in terms of you may actually know more about where the state of the Latin American solidarity movements are and Central American solidarity. I know it's quite powerful in the 80s. I don't know if that's, and I know there's like School of the Americas, which does very good work. I don't know in terms of organized force if that still exists or if it's fallen apart in various. I sort of suspect the latter and think it needs to be rebuilt. But I think this is the right moment to try and do it, because I think what Barahona said about the importance of what the U.S. is trying to do and what it's trying to stop in Latin America through the coup is right. So I think it's something of a decisive battle. So. As much as we can try and organize to fight it is important. I think the key sort of locus of struggle is in Honduras itself, and I think there are actually major questions that that are raised by the. I mean, I think like hitherto the demonstration, the marches have been large mass marches and nonviolent, and I think that's been correct. I think it's helped build a lot of support for the demonstration. I think people are now asking questions both. Well, we're facing terrible repression. What is the question of self-defense? Like, do we just get shot? It's a tricky question, and then the question of social power. So it's like, can the coup regime, with the support of the U.S., actually just wait out any number of demonstrations until people just get tired of it? That seems to be what they're sort of just waiting out, in addition to a lot of repression. So there have been calls from some figures on the left, which I'm sympathetic towards we actually need to initiate a general strike in the country to try and choke off the economic power. It's a very serious question. It's not something you can just sort of say. There actually have been formal calls for a general strike, but it's not actual. That's it. There are major questions facing the thing. I mean, it's fascinating to study. I actually want to go back there at some point. But I think the main thing that obviously we need to try and do is build the solidarity, help people understand the truth of what's going on. Because I think if people understood it, it'd be very clear, and they'd be on the right side.
The Obama administration hasn't even decided if there's been a coup in Honduras. You see, if it's officially a coup, they have to cut off aid to the regime. The International Monetary Fund is playing along too. They've just sent $150 million to the Honduran regime. There's been not a whisper of protest from Washington. At the Connecticut AFL-CIO convention, John Wilhelm, national president of Unite Here, spoke about his organization's dispute with Andy Stern and SEIU.
We have no beef with SEIU in Connecticut. In fact, we don't have any beef with most of SEIU. We have a beef with Andy Stern and the national leadership of SEIU. And when this began, I thought, well, this is a terrible diversion. And it is. But there's something very fundamental here. And it goes to what kind of a labor movement we're going to have. We're going to have a labor movement where a few very smart people sit in offices in Washington, D.C. and make decisions for the rest of us. Or we're going to have a labor movement where workers mean something, and members mean something, and local unions, and district councils, and joint boards mean something. If we can't build an empowered labor movement at the grassroots level, we are finished. We'll never get beyond the 7% in the private sector, the 12% in the overall workforce. It ain't going to happen. Top down, it's not going to happen. With very smart people sitting in offices in Washington, it's going to happen because at the grassroots level, workers look upon the labor movement as a way of empowering themselves, not following somebody else. You know, I've been the president of an international union, as John said in his introduction, for 11 years. Secretary-Treasurer before that, and I will tell you, that's a very humbling experience, and it ought to be. I know that as the president of the International Union, when I go up against global corporations in the hospitality industry, I can't do a damn thing by myself. And there's a problem in our labor movement, and I'm not talking behind anybody's back. I say this out loud in assemblages of union presidents. I call it union president disease. What that means is that people like me have a risk if we listen to all of the baloney that passes for discussion, especially in Washington, D.C. There's a risk of us thinking that we mean something by ourselves. I don't mean a damn thing in our union without all those people who were up here a few minutes ago. I don't mean a damn thing. Laura Smith and Bob Proto and Jeffrey Boyd and I don't mean a damn thing when we go up against Yale University, one of the richest, most powerful institutions in the world. We mean something if we're reflecting a mobilized, empowered group of union members who work for that institution and with the support that we've always gotten from all of you. So we're in this fight with SEIU. We'll get through it. And at the other end of it, I hope that we don't just win our particular part of that fight. I hope we contribute to a greater understanding of what we need to do to build a bottom-up, strong, vital, empowered, working-class movement